What is up, guys? Welcome to Spartan One, you absolute fucking legends. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is an article that I read basically that says there's a disconnect between what the USDA says we should be eating and what actually makes us healthy. Shocker, right? So according to the USDA, 59% of people adhere to their dietary guidelines. USDA's dietary guidelines. However, 74% of people in the United States are overweight or obese and have a litany of symptoms associated with significant lack of metabolic health. Yikes. So a lot of where this came from, right? And I personally don't believe that this is essentially like malicious intent by the, USDA, but what it is essentially just a miscalibration of what we as humans should be eating. And there's a lot of things that we can eat, right? But what we've designed in terms of our food pyramid just necessarily isn't optimal for a majority of people. And combine that with a sedentary lifestyle that's a lot less active than it was even in the 70s or 80s, there's a whole skew of health issues that I've experienced, I'm sure you've experienced, where we age and we just don't feel as good as we used to, right? And there's a lot of factors that can play into that. But for me personally, when I started really perfecting my nutrition, I noticed the biggest uptake of positive emotions. And I would say mindset work and stuff like that affected it as well. But essentially, there are many other dietary frameworks that are based on up-to-date science and offer a more holistic approach to nutrition. These frameworks consider the unique needs of each individual and provide guidance on how to nourish our bodies in ways that lead to optimal health, right? So when we look at a traditional food pyramid, it's pretty much entirely based off of like carbohydrates being the #1 thing that we should be eating. And while carbohydrates are good, what they do is they spike what's called our glycemic index, essentially meaning that if we have, too many carbs, what's going to happen is our blood sugar is going to go up a little bit higher than we'd like it to. And when it goes up a little bit higher, what happens is it goes up and we feel good, but it comes back down. It's essentially like if we drink alcohol. That also spikes our blood sugar. So you feel really, really good, and then after that first beer, you start to feel a little bit less good. Now, firstly, it's the alcohol, but secondly, it's also your blood sugar elevated. So you want to have that second beer to get more alcohol and to get more blood sugar so that you can sustain that heightened level of a glycemic index, because you started at a lower point, and now since it's spiked, your body's just not going to feel as good unless it's at that level again. So what the advantages are to really mitigating or to lessening your carbohydrate intake is that you're gonna be at a much more stable blood sugar. And now you can do this with carbohydrate heavy diets as well. You eat a lot of vegetables, those are carbohydrate heavy diets. All vegetables are pretty much carbohydrates. So you can do it with veggies and things like that, but anytime you're just kind of raw dogging it or just going in there and basically just like shooting from the hip and fucking around with whatever you want to eat, you're not going to have a super stable blood sugar, right? And what happens is when we have a lot of carbohydrates where we're fluctuating up and down, we'll generally eat and then want to go eat something else, and then we'll get tired and then we'll go eat because our willpower is a little bit diminished because we got tired, and now we want to eat some more carbs, and we're just living life continually on this roller coaster that goes on for a long time. And that's not to say that's for everybody, right? But a vast majority of people feel that way, and 74% of Americans are obese, right? So what happens as well, when we have carbohydrates in our system and we have a ton of carbohydrates in there, it makes it a little bit harder to burn fat, because the metabolic process for burning fat is basically ketosis, right? But in order to get into ketosis, we need to burn out those sugar stores in our liver and our different reserves, so that sugar, which is actually a preferential source of nutrition for the brain, can be depleted enough to where our body can start going into burning fat mode. And if we're constantly filling up with carbohydrates, then we never really get to go into that fat mode, which is why a lot of people have a bunch of success with intermittent fasting. But the issue that I have with intermittent fasting is that if you rock with a really low glycemic index all day, even if you push your meals all the way to the evening time, you're gonna still have that big spike, right? So in my personal, humble opinion, what I wanna do is have a really consistently legit glycemic index throughout the course of the entire day. And the reason for that is because, number one, your inflammation goes way down when you do that. So meaning that you don't need as much sleep, you can work out harder and recover quicker, and when you're running in ketosis, what your body is doing is basically producing these little guys called ketone bodies to break down fat cells, which in turn run your brain off of something called beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is really interesting because it's actually a better molecular structure than glucose, and it's produced in-house, which means it's custom made for your body, right? So if you have basically carbohydrates and you get the sugars from a box of Wheaties, your brain is running off of those sugars that come from the box of Wheaties. But if you have fat that your body is burning, particularly your own fat, it's being burnt and producing a byproduct called beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is a fucking phenomenal way to run your brain. And you hear individuals talk a lot about ketogenic diets and improved cognitive function and some other things like that, and it's 100% true. I remember one day I was driving across the bridge to St. Petersburg from Tampa, and I was studying and doing a therapeutic ketogenic diet, which is like 75% fats, right? It's not fucking around with the fats, a lot of fucking fats. And my brain was working so well that I wanted to go do math problems, and I had never wanted to or enjoyed math my entire life. I wanted to literally go do fucking math problems. So that was the first experience where I really learned that like you can actually have a dietary system that is worth some of the inconveniences that it may have in terms of exponentially better performing results. So when we look at a basic metabolic, structure, what we're looking at here is an engine that basically takes whatever food you have and converts it into a human body. So when we look at metabolism, that is one of the most important aspects other than actually what you're eating of nutrition. Because when you think about it like this, right? Say I eat a banana. A banana is converted by my metabolic structure into a human body, which is pretty fucking crazy if you think about it, right? Because that banana is a banana, and then I eat it, and a couple hours later, it's a human body, which is nutty. So a big factor of optimizing performance in regards to nutrition is understanding that your metabolism being healthy has a huge impact on how you process food. So individuals, myself included, for a long time would just focus on what foods we're eating, what we're doing to basically meet our macros and shit like that, which kind of matters, but if you're not really honing in as well on the metabolic process of being able to convert whatever you have into a better performing human, then you're missing a component. It's like having a shitty engine and then putting premium gas in there. It doesn't matter how good the gas is, if the engine is dog shit, then it's just gonna turn into nothing. So when we look at making that metabolic structure really, really strong, there's lots of things we can do. Fasting, I mentioned before, is a really good way to create cellular autophagy, which will clean a lot of those dead cells out, kind of clean the pipes and everything like that. But when I focus in on metabolic structure, what's really important is to focus in on the fact that metabolism can be influenced by subconscious programming. If you think about it like this, right? A kid, you see that guy in high school who can eat fucking whatever he wants, and he's just lean as shit, and he has no issues at all. And people are like, oh, that guy just has good genetics, right? So there's a genetic factor that definitely plays into it. But genetics can really be stretched, and genetics can really be stretched specifically with subconscious reprogramming, right? So if you get told your whole life, you know, hey, our family's fat, our family's this, our family doesn't do well with this, what do you think your subconscious in your body, 75 trillion cells, are going to replicate when they hear that story reinforced over and over and over again? They're gonna have a story about your metabolism, they're gonna have a story about your weight, they're gonna have a story about all these things. So if we can go in and consciously reprogram a couple things over 30 to 60 days using different frequencies, different affirmations, different repetitions, to where finally your cells and your body start to pick up on this new story and they start to replicate that out, what we can do is we can shift that metabolic structure and that metabolic health to where we'll still focus in on eating really good. And personally, I'm always gonna focus towards eating more ketogenically, but we can open up a breadth of basically foods that we can eat and actually integrate at a much better level. So it gives us a lot more freedom, right? Because if our metabolism can be structured to its most optimal level, then what that means is that we can have a little bit more freedom, right? If we eat some junk food, if we eat something that's off of our diet, it's not gonna fucking hurt us because our metabolism is so strong that we can take those things and we can integrate them at a much higher level because our metabolism is really on point. So my primary and final point is that when we look at food, the food structure pyramid is jacked. So we want to basically work ourselves away from having huge glycemic spikes. Usually that results in eating more ketogenically, higher fat, or lower glycemic carbohydrate type diets. Second thing we want to do is we want to focus in on having our metabolic structure optimized. The first thing we can do is we can fast. There's lots of different ways we can fast to clean that structure. We can optimize gut health. But my personal opinion is that we should program ourselves through subconscious reprogramming to have a fucking sick metabolism that can deal with any toxins or bullshit that we have in our environment. And in my opinion, that's a great way to optimize our dietary structure, keep our blood sugar levels rocking, and get our engine fine-tuned so that we can go optimize and dominate. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want more content, go to SpartanOneElite.com. I've got some articles up there. I've got some packages that I've built as well. One of them, the very first introductory package, is basically one to just reprogram yourself for something like this, get your metabolism, your structure working in favor of whatever lifestyle you want to live. And then I've got some more advanced stuff on there too. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.